I am ecstatic. For my friend Mark, who started his channel, Mark's Game Room, it's blown up. It's blown up. Mark's Game Room is easily the fastest channel I have ever gotten to see the behind the scenes on. I'm quite delighted for my friend Mark that he's done so well from the jump, from the start. The next stages for him is going to be, can he sustain the pace? Because it's a lot of work that goes into making videos that look like they're super easy and breezy to make, that anybody could make. I invited Mark to give us some insights into what it's like to be him. How did he conceptualize the channel? How did he know it was going to do okay? How much of it has surprised them because it's done better than okay? It's done really okay. And he's off to a great start. In this episode, he's given us a lot of insights into what makes really good video content for YouTube. Variety of elements. There's some tips and tricks of the trade that he explains. And I'm just delighted and honored to even have him as a friend and been able to give him a little bit of what I know about YouTube that has shaped his channel so much. His channel is all him, though. It's not just, I'm like, Mark, maybe we should sign in for a YouTube account and share a link. That's the extent, I think, that I've been able to contribute to his brilliance. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are too. I know some of you guys are from Mark's channel looking for some more interesting background. It's definitely here on this episode. So welcome. Thank you guys. And let's check it out. Mark. Oh my God. I got the famous Mark on my show.
All right. Yeah. Famous in my mind. And in 1,700 subscribers on YouTube, right?
That's 700 people.
1,700.
Wait, how many? 1,007? Hold on.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
I always when I'm talking to people that were starting YouTube channels for, if they get to 700 subscribers, I'm always like I'm trying to emphasize, that's 700 people. You need to perk up. You need to work on it. But you've definitely blown past that threshold.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just kind of amazing.
Mark's Game Room. It's funny. This genre that you're in I've gotten more and more interested in it because of you and your channel, and then our behind the scenes discussion. So that's why we thought, why don't we just have you come on and let's just have a discussion about the channel, like what have you learned and what have you grown with, right? Because I gotta say, you're the fastest YouTuber channel I've ever worked with.
Wow. All right.
Pretty much.
It's been a crazy 6 weeks. I mean, I can't believe it's only been 6 weeks. Yeah.
We're not even through a month and a half, 2 months. My math is terrible. Yeah. To give you some context, for my first 1,000 downloads, and this was before YouTube was a thing for me. This was 8 years ago when I started my podcast, Through the Noise. And I just wanted to meet other nonprofits at that time. It took us a good year and a half before we busted our first 1,000 downloads of an episode.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And but the power of the visual component to everything, and that was an audio only show, but the power of the visual component adds this layer of dimension that if you can fine tune it, like you've done it, you can grow quick. You can grow a lot faster.
One thing I would say to start off, Ernesto, right, is I just said, hey, 6 weeks, and it's been kind of crazy. We have almost 1,800 subscribers in 6 weeks, which is great. I think we're up to close to 175,000 views. We blew through the requirement to be a YouTube partnership program weeks ago, right? And it's wow, this is crazy. This is great. But I didn't start working on this 6 weeks ago.
Oh, no? You didn't just sit down and I'm going to start the channel and just no.
Yeah. This is really kind of the end of, I would say, 2 years of preparation and getting ready and deciding if it was the right thing to do and getting my ducks in a row, right? So it is great. We're off to a great start, and that was our plan. Our plan was to hit it hard in the first 2 months with programming that we thought was going to make a big splash, make sure as many people knew about it as we could, and come out swinging. And it feels like that happened. Now, we're going to kind of change our pace a little bit to go from here. But this explosion is a kind of a justification, right, of our vision and the prep work that we put into it, right? And that's the big thing.
We should clarify this because I've been talking to you about your channel or just YouTube in general for like a good year and a half before you even launched your channel, right? And
Yeah,
our
yeah,
sons played in the same baseball team, and that's how we got to know each other. It's
yeah.
like
Right, right.
we had a lot of time between the little league pitches and hits, and you know, but we didn't. I don't think you or I expected it to be like this.
Yeah.
How many thousand views?
175,000.
175,000 views. It's like, if you try to quantify that, how did you get 170? Let's say everybody watches the video at least once, right? Maybe they don't watch the whole thing, but still, that's
I'm getting good retention. Like, for the good videos, it's like over about 30% watch the whole thing first time through. That's pretty good. And I think all my videos have good retention in the beginning, right? The first 30 seconds, they give you that data. Pretty much all of them over 50%. One of them is like 75%. And that's pretty good. And that all comes from like best practices, I think, in YouTube.
let's go into some of those because I think that's like really important. And I got to say, like some of the channels that I work on, the retention is way, like the full length retention is way, way lower because we're starting at a different level of we're starting in I'm just turning on lights and gonna have a conversation just like we're doing right now. But for you, I mean, you're a pro videographer, right? You've already learned some tricks of the trade. Can you give us some sense of what the principles that are guiding you?
So number one is what I've already alluded to, right? It's like preparation, right? Like you don't just like turn on a camera. Like you always kind of have a sense of why you're turning on the camera, what experience you're giving to the audience, right? And we started off, which I think was like a huge explosion video, but I did research into it, knowing like the kind of hits these types of videos get and what our audience wanted. So the channel, Mark's Game Room, is like a historical miniatures wargaming channel. So we talk about history and how we can use gaming to explore history, right? And I know my audience because I'm part of my audience. And one of the things our audience loves is the show Band of Brothers. So in just doing cursory looking on YouTube, Band of Brothers videos, they're just constantly getting millions of hits. Like a poor performing Band of Brothers video will get like 200,000 views or something. So I just on that cursory research, that's a topic that has broad appeal beyond the wargaming community. So I wanted the channel to start off big, get some good numbers to get people excited, even though they might not be my core audience. And that gives the channel over time the ability to be deep and wide, right? So that was the very first thing, was to do the research, like what is going to appeal. And Band of Brothers was big, and then I made friends with one of the sons of one of the Band of Brothers through Facebook. And like for me, that was a great thing. I was like, wow, this guy's cool. He's really fun. We made friends. I convinced him to come to the game room and do a video. So and that was all knowing that my audience would love the same experience that I was having.
Can you connect him, this special guest? Because, in case somebody on my channel doesn't.
Sure. So Band of Brothers was a miniseries about paratroopers who fought in World War II, the Steven Spielberg show. And it follows these characters through the war. And one of the characters is named George Luz, and he is featured heavily in the show. He's kind of the group's comedian, right? So he's always making the jokes, and everyone loves him. And unfortunately, he passed away. The actual George Luz passed away right when they were starting to make the show. And if you watch the show, it starts with these interviews with the actual veterans when they're old men, kind of reminiscing. But you never got to see George Luz, yet he's in the show. And so the person I met was his son. And I said, wow, what an amazing connection we can have here. And what a great experience I can give my audience. And so part of it was making a relationship with him that then I could bring through the YouTube channel to the rest of the world. And that's, that takes time. That takes setting up, right? And it worked out, right? And he was so forthcoming with me that his dad was never interviewed, never filmed talking about the war, except for one time. He was at some event in Rhode Island, and there was some guy with a video camera, and his dad talked to him about parachuting into Normandy for like 6 minutes. And his son had this footage, and he said to me, well, if we do some videos, could you use that footage? I'm like, yeah, because you know what? The whole world wants to see that footage, right? Not just me. And so I convinced him that I would be a good steward of that footage for his dad. And I made the video. And it's, I think, up to 140,000 views. Something's insane. I don't know.
Something massive right out of the gate, yeah.
It's the big video, right? But so, I mean, that's my first thing. If you're going to get a channel, you really got to do the prep. Find out about what you think your audience likes. And then come out and then prepare so that when you launch, they'll take you seriously. And be like, wow, okay, this is the real deal. Like, I've taken the time to really package something for the audience they're going to really want to see. So that's what I was trying to do in these first 2 months, is convince them that stick with me. I got your back.
We'll do some awesome stuff.
We're going to make some awesome stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. I never knew there was this genre. I mean, I could imagine there would be, but I never knew about it until you introduced me to it, where you have these tabletop gaming sessions where there's like super miniaturized models and you have some kind of roll of the dice experience. I don't know if I could describe it, kind of D&D like, but there's sort of like a playbook associated with it. And so the idea for everybody who's a fan of history buff, especially of these battles, it's a way of like kind of getting into the decision making that may have occurred during those times. Granted, it's in a game setting, and you are talking about life and death situation that happens historically. But for people that are super fans of this type of world, it connects the history. It creates a gaming experience. It's something to bring nerdy guys together.
Yeah, absolutely. We're proud nerds. Yeah. But you know what? That's your audience. This is what it's all about. Getting out there with your friends, going through crazy places in the mud to see things you'd never see before or any other way. Yeah, come on out with us. But most of the action is going to take place here in the game room, where we're going to go through history battle by battle. And you're all welcome to join us. With the help of these guys, we're going to be playing war games, inviting wonderful guests to join us, and doing some crazy things with wargaming that you've never seen before.
But you're adding this other element that I really like. I just want to add that one point of like, you go to the fields too.
Right. Yeah, the second month, which is we're in the middle of right now, I picked Gettysburg because that's also a big topic. It's not as huge as Band of Brothers, which is interesting because when I did my research, I looked at the videos. Band of Brothers always getting 1 million views, hundreds of thousands of views. And that's over time, right? So I feel like my Band of Brothers video will eventually get at that level. Like Gettysburg doesn't get quite that level, but it's still big in my community. So I did this Gettysburg series of videos, and that's what's played out. Very popular. Not as crazy, not getting as many crazy views as Band of Brothers. But yeah, that's did a lot of research. There's this fascinating question, what if, about the Battle of Gettysburg, and we wanted to explore it. And so again, I got this really interesting person to come with me. He's a licensed battlefield guide, young guy up at Gettysburg, great on camera. And we explored this question at the actual battlefield park, where I had my gamers come to the park and kind of move around the battlefield. Like, okay, this is what you're literally seeing. What are your orders? Where do you go?
The Union players will start at General Meade's headquarters, where Cemetery Ridge blocks the view of the battlefield. So they will need to interpret signal messages to try and figure out what the Confederates are up to. I will be the Union player's game master and will pass on a mix of historical signal messages and messages generated by the Confederates movement.
All right, guys, it's 3 o'clock, July 2nd, 1863.
Eric Lindblade, co-host of the fantastic Battle of Gettysburg podcast, is going to act as game master to Matt and Carl, who are playing General Hood and his staff. Can they move their division around to the right?
So we have some decisions to make, and the decision that you have made is that you will be launching a flank attack around the southern end of the Army of the Potomac's line, beyond those two hills that you see in your front.
And I brought a drone. Luckily, what we were exploring would have happened outside the confines of the park, so I didn't have any problem using a drone. So we had drone footage. They would move on the roads by car. We put cameras in the cars to capture their conversation, and really made something special that people in my community are like, wow, like we could never do this. So this is like beyond anything we could accomplish, but it's so cool. And we made it a two-parter. So now they have to tune in next week to see how it concludes, right? And it's really getting a lot of great comments. And
what I also dive into is the way you cut the videos. And I want to go into some of that because you are, when I started my podcast, it was audio only because we didn't want to have to worry about the visual.
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot. It's like it's not just like just another layer of editing and things. It's like an order or two more magnitude of thinking and planning and lighting and whatever. And honestly, I'm still at the infancy of like learning what those elements are. So I was wondering if you can like walk us a little bit into that with your videos.
So the question becomes, what's the process like? And there's always three phases that have gone back to since Charlie Chaplin, right, started making films, which is planning, is your pre-production, then filming, then post, which is editing, right? And for YouTube, there's a lot of considerations you have to make when you're thinking about your audience and your frequency of delivering material to them, what their expectation is, and how can you meet that without sacrificing quality or driving yourself crazy. And how I'm trying to solve it is in my game room, I've rigged it up with, I can use anywhere from 4 to 8 cameras. And I have a live switcher, which means all the cameras are recording what's happening at the game. And I can live edit, so to speak. And so that's a huge advantage because when we're done with the game, I have an edited program. And what I do is I cut it down. So instead of building it from 8 different cameras, I have a show that I reduce, and that still takes time, but it's a lot easier. So I've tried to use technology as a way to make videos quicker. Now, the video we did in Gettysburg, when I said we went out in the field, that was a totally different ball of wax, right?
You don't have your switcher there.
No switcher. So that was much more planning, right? So I went originally with the battlefield guide to figure out what it was going to be, where we were going to go.
Well, that's trip one.
Trip one, took my notes. Then I went back with some of my friends and walked them through it. Trip 2, right? And then I was like, okay, here's some of the pitfalls. And then I had my shooting notes. We're going to shoot here. We're going to shoot there. Drone needs to get that. We need these cutaways, and then you go and you shoot it, and then you have to edit it. Now, in some ways, editing that is not super difficult because we don't know what the people in the game were going to be saying, but I knew where they were going to be and where they were going to go. So there was like a kind of a shooting script. So it was easy to kind of hang it all together.
That is part, like you're creating a story arc, or you're trying to, and make sure that it makes sense and that it's, in the supporting visuals. I think you had a map where you're sort of showing the two teams
Yes.
walking in their cars,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you're describing, and you have to come up with those elements in between, both to keep like the visual compelling, like keep switching between what's inside happening in the car, the overhead shot, and then like the visual to keep people oriented on the map. And then you got to weave your voiceover. I mean, you make it look easy, Mark, once the thing's done.
I've been doing it for 25 years, right? So I kind of know what I'm doing. I mean but I have to say, even if you haven't been doing it for 25 years, the more planning you do, the more you know what you actually want to end up with, the easier it is. Because then what you don't do is shoot stuff you don't need, and that's a huge problem.
Right, because it's easy to shoot, and you always think, "I need B-roll," but you don't really know what the B-roll, where's the B-roll gonna go. Then you just end up shooting a bunch of stuff, and then you have gobs of video that you have to, like, sift through.
Yeah, you have essentially someone has walked in front of you, dumped two puzzles in front of you, mixed up the pieces, and taken the pictures away. And they tell you make a puzzle. That's what it's like when you just shoot lots and lots and lots and lots of B-roll. It's like, what is all this? And then you find out, oh, I think I'm telling this story, but I never shot this other thing because I didn't realize, right? So the more you know, the more in your head it's done before you film, the easier it's going to be. So that Gettysburg one, it seemed very complicated, but for me at the time, I knew what we were doing. I was like, no, get that, don't shoot that. And then in the post-production, it came together fairly straightforward.
Because you scouted it almost twice, once with the historian, and then telling him roughly the idea, and then he said, "Okay, well, you can go this way and that way," and then now you're warming up your gamers that are gonna come with you. You're giving them their cues, but you're also, throughout the whole process, you're taking, like, grab shot here, right? Grab interview discussion here.
And also because I know in my head already kind of what it is, being aware of what's being said at the moment. Like they might say something and be like, "Oh, but that road over there, that hill that I can see over there," I'd be like, "Oh, I know I'm going to need this, so I just shoot that hill or that road."
Oh, the object of their like, what they're saying about. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And so that I know, okay, I have that because it's probably relevant to the story we're actually telling. I didn't go and shoot every hill and every road and every cannon, just the ones that matter. And so it's knowing exactly what you want, but then on the day of, just being aware of what's actually happening to get things you might need.
Now, I've gotten the privilege to see, your desk and the premiere where it's cut, sort of like all the little pieces, and it's just like, I mean, it's hundreds of little ones everywhere. Do you label a lot of this stuff, or are you marking sections? Like, did you write the hill on whatever at
B-roll.
some point? Yeah.
It depends. It depends on what the footage is. If I have time, yeah, it makes sense to go through and label everything, right? On that one in particular, there was a lot of labeling that had to go on because I had 4 cameras shoot everything. So I had a bunch of my friends, they're all gamer friends, so none of them were professional cinematographers, all shot on iPhones and a drone. So they all filmed, and I also had recorder microphones on the speakers, so it's a little lavalier mic that goes to basically a little tape recorder. Doesn't use tape, but and we had to use the old total Charlie Chaplin style of when everyone was ready to film, someone went in front of the people that were speaking and they did a big clap, right? And the clap, what that does is that gives me an audio signature and a visual signature of the clap, and I can line everything up.
Easier to find that clap in this
Right.
huge
And so then you
collection
just
of
line
video
up all your
guys.
files, but I had to know who was shooting what. So I had to label all the cameras. Like, this was Ben's camera. This file is Mark's camera. This audio is Matt's audio. So that just keeps it organized. So the more organized you can be as well in your editing, easier it will be. So.
Now, let's talk about from the perspective of the YouTube channel. Obviously, it has there's a general theme. It's Mark's Game Room. It's about wargaming and the historical context. But each video is almost like its own unique style thing. And in a sense, you don't want to make a variety show, but you want to have a variety of types of videos that fit the show's premise, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Like that's part of my audience, right? So my audience loves history. And certainly gamers, some people will gravitate towards specific periods. Like some gamers like, I really just like World War II. Some gamers might be like, well, I like World War II and the American Revolution and World War I naval gaming. You know, there's so much. And it's as varied as there are gamers. And what that means, though, too, is if you just stick with one genre within the hobby, then your audience will shrink because it's just going to be, you're already talking about, in America, a small group of people. You don't want to make it even smaller. And my style is that I like to game a lot of different periods because I like to explore a lot of different types of history. So I've tried to keep each month around a theme. So we started in June 6th, which is the anniversary of D-Day, which is what, Band of Brothers, they jumped into Normandy on D-Day. So all of June was programming about Normandy and paratroopers in Normandy. And on those videos, here's a definite YouTube tip. All of those videos had a similar look and feel, right? I have a graphic artist who's a gamer who I met, and he's like, hey, I want to help. I want to do this. I want to be on your team. And I was like, I'd love it. And he's a great guy. And he has created kind of graphics that have the same look. So it gives all the videos in June about Normandy the same feel. They're all branded Mark's Game Room, but like the fonts and the style of, graphics have the same. Now we're going in July to Gettysburg because the anniversary of Gettysburg is July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So Google Trends tells us most people search for Gettysburg on those dates every year. So we wanted to release on those dates.
There's your editorial calendar right there.
Yep. Same thing with June 6th for Band of Brothers. And so we've been releasing Gettysburg themed stuff. And again, he's creating a different style of graphics for these video that looks much more like the Civil War period while still including my same brand. And that's the theory, is that as we move each month around to different historical periods, the videos within that suite of videos for the month will have the same graphic feel, but they'll all be branded the same from top to bottom. And that seems to be working.
I mean, I think that your graphics guy is very talented. I mean, thumbnail making is its own art form, almost should be dedicated to someone else.
So it is. Let's talk thumbnails. Yeah. So when I talk about graphics within the videos, it's a guy, he's like 61, right? He's kind of in his career, he's kind of done a lot, so he wants to just do some fun stuff with me. And he's excellent, top-notch former BBC guy. Thumbnails, on the other hand, is its own person. It's my nephew. He's 24. He has a job, a huge part of his job, like 75% of his job is making thumbnails for a popular sports YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
And so I just called him and I was like, Spencer. And so when he was going to graduate high school, I did this independent study with him, right? And I said, if you complete it, I'll take you to France for 2 weeks. And he did. I took him to France. So he's like, well, Uncle Mark, I need to pay you back for that, so I'll do your thumbnails. But it's the same thing. Like, he's using best practices that he's learned every day in a successful YouTube channel, and it's giving all of my thumbnails a unified feel, which is really important. So people see that. Oh, that must be Mark's Game Room.
Yeah, it's both things are critical. The graphics inside and definitely the thumbnail is what's going to get somebody to click. But the graphics inside is what YouTube is. That YouTube will take film is just like, it's just images, right? Stacked up 30 frames
frames a second.
frames per second. and they'll run the whole video through all their AI algorithms, and they're identifying all the like iconic elements, objects, people, words. So to the extent that you can, if you have like this kind of conversation we're having, right? If I can go with my production and insert some of the stuff that we are talking as actual visual aids in the conversation, so it's just not just two talking heads, the algorithm is going to pick up on those categories and then will more likely float my video to some of those areas. In your case, band of brother footage, occasional, fair use, just discussing it and tying it into the whole thing is what is driving some of that organic reach, right? Like YouTube's like, oh, Band of Brothers, very popular, iconic video shots. Let's just push it off to these people that we all know they love Band of Brothers, and let's surface it as a suggested next video, right? That's what happens. If you just rely on just the title and the description, it's not enough, because I feel like stuff that I've been reading, you sort of like turn the knob down on the importance of that, because I think anybody can write any title, any description. And what they're doing more is, well, what is the actual video presenting, which is what matters, right?
Title is still important to catch someone's eye when they're scrolling. When the Band of Brothers one, the one that's done crazy, I was like really working hard to get these up, and we put it up, and I think for some crazy reason it didn't have Band of Brothers in the title, and I want to say that, but it's kind of a blur. What I remember was we launched
You did
it.
do a change.
We did do a change, and it was like the first day. Like I was looking at what I was getting hits on. There was 4 videos on the channel when it launched on June 6th. I wanted there to be something there to people see. There's something here. And there was a game video where the Band of Brothers' son, George Loves Jr., actually played a game with us, which was interesting because he had never played a war game in his life. But it was super fun because, like his dad, he's kind of a comedian, and we just had a great time, and he was like super fun. And that was getting good views, I think, probably from the gamer community. But the video that was us watching Band of Brothers with him and him talking about his dad and everything was like 180 views, like nothing. I was like, that's crazy. And I changed the title, and I want to say I put Band of Brothers in there, I think. And I woke up the next morning and it had 180,000. I mean, yeah, no, it had 1,800 views, like overnight.
Right. Watch Band of Brothers with George Wallace. That's the title you ended with.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the wider audience. It's not necessarily the gamers, but you might be bringing in people that are interested in Band of Brothers into the gaming world that this exists, right?
For sure.
So that's kind of the trick, is sort of you're trying to go deep in a genre, because this is pretty niche genre. Let's just be frank.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But you're also tying it to a wider, like the level up of the movie or the history of World War II. That's a much, much wider genre, right? And so you're sort of making the genre for your rabid fans game room. Those are your people. But then you're sort of throwing in some elements that takes a lot of work to bring in the wider audience, to sort of bring in more people into the experience. And hopefully from that, you create almost in kind of a mixing of these audiences. It certainly will distribute your channel further than if you just stuck with the gamers. Or it might even be too difficult if you were just going after World War II, videos of World War II. Like there's a lot more competition too in there, right? I would argue.
I've been in this hobby since I've been a kid. And, in it intensely. Like I go to a lot of the regional conventions, and I'm known. I've written war games. I sell them on the internet. So I'm known in the hobby. So I have an audience already. Right. And how I view this is I'm just reaching these people in a different way. By giving the channel, though, other types of videos, my hope is that it makes the channel over time deeper and wider, so that maybe the gaming guys want something different in their menu. So it's not just like, oh, it's just another game. Oh, this is interesting. This other way over here.
A twist.
A twist. And then you never know from the other side what you're going to get. Like the people that just love Band of Brothers, just love the history, think the game is not interesting. That I am going to try to do more of those types of videos as well. A, because they're popular, and B, I really enjoy doing it as a producer. And I think my audience, even the gamers, really like it. And George Luz, he's blown away. Like I told him, well, George, we'll do this. Maybe we'll get like 50,000 views, over like 6 months. And now it's been 6 weeks and we have 140,000 views. So he works with Stephen Ambrose Tours, giving Band of Brothers tours in Europe. And he does like 3 a year. And he was over there like 2 weeks ago. And it was late and there was a big party outside his hotel. He couldn't sleep and he called me. And he's like, hey, Mark, I can't sleep, but I was looking at YouTube. Man, our video's doing great. And so he's on board. And I'm like, let's do more. Like he knows all the other sons and daughters, including the son of one of the characters who's featured in the companion show to Band of Brothers called The Pacific. And so if I can get him to do it, now I open up the whole Pacific theater for history and for my gamers and games. And on a different level, me as kind of a PBS producer, right? And this is the other side of me. This is a wheelhouse for me, like interviewing people. And the World War II generation is essentially gone. The only people that are still with us, unfortunately, are in their late 90s, and they would have been, kids in the late part of the war, like 44. They would have been 17. So how do we hear what that generation was like? What's our connection? And it's really through their kids. And so by interviewing their kids, you can still hear echoes of that generation. And that's interesting to me. And if you look at the demographics of the people, the 140,000 views of that video, it tends to be 45 and higher, mainly. So I think what it is the people that are really loving that are also kids of World War II veterans that have lost their parents, that are kind of communing with what George is saying, what it was like for him to be the son or daughter of a World War II veteran.
Right, because there's a whole generation there that was impacted by the war as well. The offspring of these guys that went there were, and I think that contextualizes this type of stuff really. I was just sitting there as you're just describing this, and there's something I've been contemplating making a quick video on my own channel about. Every video needs to have something surprising, because that's what grabs the attention. Something that's like, what? Never seen that before, or like, what's going on here? That's what the thumbnails and the whole clickbait world exists. It's like, it's the thing that kind of makes you go, huh, right? But then the other side of that is you need to have something emotional, really funny, really touching, really whatever emotional piece of it is what's going to make it memorable. So if you just have surprise, 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 maybe you get Mr. Beast video. This does really well. May not remember it. I don't know. But if you don't have something more emotional, and I think Mr. Beast videos are very emotional. I should take that back. There's some the one when he did the let's like fix 1,000 people's eyes. There was definitely some clips that were like, wow, can't believe, he caught that. But anyway, he's the best at that, this world that we're in. And so I just think that those two elements, if you can squeeze it into every single video in terms of what you're delivering, you're off to a good start. And then the way you're describing it sounds like, Mark, find that whatever it is that's your passion and wrap it into this type of work, right?
I mean, if you can. I think YouTube, one thing that plays well or people can appreciate is authenticity, because you don't have necessarily a big production company making it. It's just people raw showing you what's happening. And although I've worked for PBS for years and on crews and everything else, this is just me and my buddies. And certainly I have skills but trying to just let it be me and my buddies. And in that video with George Luz, at one point, he's talking about his dad had passed, but a lot of the other actual Band of Brothers veterans were still alive, and they still had reunions that he would go to, and how they helped him cope with his dad's loss. I mean, they made him a band of brother, right? And he got choked up, and we talked about that. And
That's a big deal. That's like your buddy's kid, you know? The guy you were in the trenches with, that's his kid right there. It sort of looks like him in some ways, and you're gonna there's a connection to that's really I think at the end, ultimately, I think that's what the fascination with this gruesome war world is, the fact that it brings people really, really close together forever, right? It leaves an imprint in those life and death experiences. So I'm really excited, Mark, for the channel that you're. You don't need my help. We were talking about, well, maybe we'll need a little bit of marketing dollars and get this scene at the right. I don't think you need that. This is doing well on its own, you know?
So I would say, to talk to that, we probably should wrap soon, but to talk to that real quickly, right? Like, I feel like I have a huge pool of creative talent. That's my big skill, right? Is I can develop and be creative, right? The business side I've never been super strong on, right? But I try to make up for that with the preparation that I said, right? Like trying to do everything I can to understand what the audience is, what they might want, how it might work. And hopefully the creativity is good enough that I'll get the numbers, and then I can, figure out the rest as we go. But, always use your help, Ernesto.
I love having this conversation. Thanks, Mark, for jumping on, and any of your fans that might be listening in on this, because I'm sure they're going to want to know more about you. Thank you guys for also helping my friend Mark get off to such a great start. Drop the ideas. The best thing is you can just ask. You can ask your community. Just write in the channel like, hey guys, what would be cool experience that we could get somebody to help contribute, so we can make more production, or so I can, pay some of my volunteers,
Right.
a little for their time, whatever it takes to make it grow, right? Yeah. I look forward to the next month, Mark.
All right. Me too. Yeah, me too.
All right. If everybody wants to go find you, it's easy. Mark's Game Room on YouTube. Just go in there and start checking it out.
Get out, like, subscribe, and let me know if you want to see anything in particular. But thanks, Ernesto. It's been great.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Visit throughthenoise.us for more episodes and subscribe to our newsletter. This show is produced by Through the Noise Consulting, uniting external communications and internal IT functions to ensure data and privacy are protected while creating innovative communications platforms. Want to start your own podcast? We can help. Visit getthroughthenoise.com to learn more.